this is Roger. This will be part 6 of my May update. Oh, this is taking up some time, but I need to do it. I'm doing this for me. I want to document every single plant on film at the start of the growing season, and in this case at the start of my Ceramis, or relatively near the start of my Ceramis project, experiment, whatever you want to call it. How to kill plants the easy way. So I can do this section quite quickly because a fair few of my Oncidiums are now in Ceramis. They're an ideal plant for this experiment to work, so I can knock these out relatively quickly. That's one of my Twinkles. That was the sort of pink one. That's not the healthiest of plants, but I'm hoping putting it in the Ceramis will give it a chance to really pull on. This is a Bealara. This has never been a strong plant. I filmed this last time I did the Oncidiums. It's really not changed a lot apart from it's now sitting in there. That's the other Twinkle. This is the brown one. I think it's actually got a name. I think it's actually called Twinkle Cinnamon, but I've just put it down as brown so that I can differentiate it. It's not really brown. It's a lovely orangey brown colour. It's actually a very attractive flower. And I'll have to turn these trays round in the gap. Right, other side of the tray. This is Oncidium White Cloud. This is one of my favourite Oncidium flowers. It's one of those change colour flowers. It opens either white and turns yellow. No, it opens yellow and then turns pure white, hence the name White Cloud. It's never been a strong grower. It's not a vigorous plant. Nonetheless, it's been put in here to try and get the roots from that new growth to go mad. We shall see. And yes, that's not an Oncidium, I know. That's my rescued gold digger. And it might be that it's actually going to grow. This was rescued from under the hedge. It was actually thrown out once. And there is a new growth coming. If that new growth can push roots out, then we have successfully rescued gold digger. One of my favourite Cattleyas. Laeliocattleya to be precise. This is one of my Sturbics. I've got several of these. I really love the flowers. This was the weak, very feeble one as far as the plant was concerned. When it came out of its pot, there was not a lot holding it in there. The pseudobulbs are desiccated. It's not a healthy plant. Maybe this experiment will recover it. This was the purple one. I'll pop the flowers up as I go along because virtually all my Oncidiums have flowered at some point. So that's tray number 1. These do actually stand in water, so they've got constant moisture around the roots. Hopefully that's not going to cause any rot around the base of the plants. So far, so good. Right, tray number 2. This is one of my Nellie Islas. If it doesn't actually succeed in the Ceramis, then this is going to be an X Oncidium, or Bergeria. Keep mucking about with the names. It's not a happy plant. Yes, it's got a new growth. It's not a good new growth. We'll see how that one does. It may pull up. This was quite a good Oncidium. This is Alicera Evening Colours The Gloaming. It's the one that has a ring of new growths around the outside. Some of them, typical Oncidium, are sticking out a bit high and will have trouble getting roots down, but some of them are attached nicely to the base of the plant. Wonderful flowers on this one. I'm hoping that that's going to do really well, having been put in the Ceramis. This is Sweet Sugar. This is one of the sort of mass-produced ones that does the rounds at the appropriate time of year. Lovely new growth around the back there. It's put round the back so that I don't knock it. I have a habit of bashing things around when I'm in a hurry. This is pushing out good new roots. They will get into the Ceramis. I have high hopes for this. It's what I call a one bulb wonder, because that's the only way it's ever been. It produces a new bulb, it flowers, has a little bit of a rest, and then it produces another new growth. Maybe with a much better root system in the Ceramis, it might manage to push out 2 new growths at the same time. Okay, round to the other side. And around this side we have one of my Shari babies. I thought we'll give it a go in this stuff and see how it does. It's got a new growth there. I think there's another tiny little one around the back of the plant. It's not a strong hybrid, or it isn't for me. I do have trouble getting these to grow and get decent root systems. And I've had new growths, like that one there was a new growth and it hasn't flowered. And that one over to the side there, that was a new growth which didn't flower. So I don't have a lot of success with Shari Baby. I might actually sacrifice the ones I've got and get a new a new plant in, because I may just think I've got a bad strain. It's possible. This is another one of my Sturbics. This has got a lovely new growth coming on, and this is the red one, and that should do okay. That had reasonable roots, so it wasn't really an experiment in the Ceramis. It was, this is where you're going to live. This is now what can only be called a back bulb division. It's just lost its last viable leaf, went brown and came off. These are 3 big strong bulbs, but they now have no leaves at all, so it can only be called a back bulb division. They're huge bulbs, they're not desiccated, and it did have some roots. Now whether it can manage to push up 1 or 2 new growths, I'll just have to wait and see. That's a Tahomia glacier. It's one of the mass-produced things that does the rounds. It's quite an attractive flower, but not my favourite. It's sort of dull colours really, but we'll see how it does. So those are my 12 that I selected to live on the high shelf where they get a fair bit of light. The other 6 are down on the lower shelf, Masdevallies and things. I showed them in an earlier part. There was a downside to this project, which I hadn't realised at the time. These trays are solid, and boy do they block out the light. So when I first put them on the top shelf, I suddenly realised that down here was getting a lot less light. Now, I don't mind a little less light, especially for Phalaenopsis, but not a lot less light. So I basically had to rearrange things and move them right over to the side, and the light comes in from behind me now where I'm filming, to make sure these lower shelves do actually get a reasonable amount of light. I still put plants on the shelf, but spaced out, and the reason I can space them out is because I've got an extra set of shelves over here, so I can space things out a bit. Right, I'm not going to bother moving this thing. This has been on film an awful lot of time. This is Catatante. It's going over now. There's gaps along the spike where things have faded. Some of the branches have been trimmed off. It's on its last legs, but it's lasted an incredibly long time with a magnificently coloured flower. It desperately needs repotting. I need to get it into some new media. It's got a good root system on it. It's a healthy plant. Huge pseudobulbs on this particular variety, but in the not too distant future it will be deciding whether it's going to push up 1 or 2 new growths, and I want those to go into new media, so it'll be coming out of its pot soon. Again, without rearranging things, this is one of my wildcats. This is Cheetah. This has been in flower for ages and I absolutely love it, but as you can see the gaps along the spikes, it's not long for this world, but it's done incredibly well. It's a good root system in that pot. Again, it's got a couple of very poor back bulbs on it, and I will repot it as soon as I take this spike off so that the new growth can get into nice shiny new media. That's the way to go with Oncidiums. This is my other Shari baby, and I don't know whether this one's doing better or worse. It doesn't have brilliant leaves on it. Some of the newer ones are quite nice, I suppose. It has got new growth coming up there. It's got another little tiny one in there. Any around this side? No. But that's a lot of plant, and again, that hasn't flowered for ages. Quite a few back bulbs on it now. It's relatively recently been repotted. It's not due to be done again, and you know, it has got roots going down into the pot. The new one's sort of coming along as well. That's a tatty looking object, but I'll put up with a bit of tat for the flowers I hope it might actually produce soon. But at the moment I've got 2 Shari babies that haven't flowered for some considerable time, and the last time one of them did, the spike was pretty poor. So they're not doing very well. They're offshoots of the same plant, so they're the same strain. And I still have this feeling that I just got a poor, you know, seedling originally, and it just is never going to do well. So it might get replaced. This is my other Nellie Isla. This one's just been repotted. This didn't have a bad root system when I did this. This is a much, much better plant for a Nellie Isla. Again, not the strongest of plants, but this one's okay. It had viable roots on it. It will grow more, and having relatively recently finished flowering, that should start pushing out new growth very soon. This is my Masai Red. This has got roots going down in the middle. I've only just repotted this. This had a good root system, or it looked like it did, around the outside of the pot. In the middle of the pot there was a lot of dead roots. It is in effect two plants. This plant here is an old back bulb, one that is probably losing its leaves in the not too distant future. That's how this one grows, and a lovely good strong new growth which will push out the new roots. And again, that's exactly the same plant in effect, mirror image. An old back bulb, a new one that may be losing its leaves soon, and a nice strong new growth. The new growths are roughly the same size. They will push on around the same speed, and it is possible to get a flower spike on both sides of these if they're happy and well. If not, probably a single flower spike in slight succession. In theory, this one will produce its flower spike a little ahead of that growth because it is slightly ahead. But hopefully 2 flower spikes, maybe more. It's a good strong plant. But it's another one of these one bulb wonders, as I call them. You know, the oldest back bulb, followed by the latest mature growth, followed by the new growth, and so it goes on, and it just sort of decays backwards, if you know what I mean. And you can end up with a plant which has got so many back bulbs, they're probably draining the life out of the poor thing. There comes a time when the number of back bulbs exceeds everything else on the plant, and there's too many, and the plant will still try and store energy into them. And I think possibly in some cases it has trouble transferring that energy from right up the back to right up the front. So sometimes you just need to rejuvenate the plant and get rid of some of the old bulbs. So that's Masai Red. This is another one of my Wildcats. This is Wildcat Rainbow. Officially I think they're now called Oncostelli. Well, they've been called all sorts of things, officially and unofficially. This was a nice strong plant. This had good roots, again recently repotted, lovely strong new growth coming off there. Not flowered for me, has it? I'm not sure. If it has, there'll be a pop-up. But it's a good plant. I like that one. Another Wildcat, this is Bobcat. This is the one with the very dark flowers. Now this one is fading. It's fading in its colour, not in the fact that the flowers are going to go over, because they haven't been open too long. They were opening when I got it. But it was almost black. It's now a deep maroon. The camera will probably lighten it even further. But nonetheless, it's the one with the little golden coloured tips on the petals and sepals. Lovely flower. And not a bad plant at all. Recently repotted. Got some good viable roots, went into the new media. It's got one new growth coming there and another new growth coming there, both of which will fire up nicely into the new media. Just what I want from an Oncidium. This is what's left of what was, or appeared to be, a good plant, and it just suddenly went, just keeled over, and a fair few of the bulbs started to rot, and I thought if I don't get something of this plant out, I will not have this plant anymore. It's Alicera Sunday Best Pink Skirt. It's an awarded plant, and it does have very, very nice flowers. So at the moment you'd class that, I suppose, as a back bulb division. It's got 2 very good bulbs on it. There are no signs of new growth yet, but it has got some viable roots in the pot. This one's been in flower until quite recently. This came from the RHS show this year, from my lovely French gentleman. It's the one he wasn't too keen on selling me. It was part of his display, and he said it's not that good a plant. And I've seen a damn sight worse. In fact, there's worse than that on this video earlier on. I like the plant. It's okay. It was repotted. It's got some viable roots down in new media. It should pull on nicely. Lovely flower again. Okay, so that's that one. And last but not least in this section, oh, I hadn't noticed the rain stopped. Yippee! These are my 2 what I call old-fashioned Odontoglossums that have had their names changed to Oncidium, so they're just buried in amongst all the other riffraff now. To me they're still special, especially this one. This is what was Odontoglossum crispum. A very, very important orchid in the history of orchids and hybridization, certainly in this country. It's now called Oncidium Alexandriae, and this is effectively a hybrid with itself. What does that mean? Well, what it meant was they had a particularly good plant, very good plant, exceptional colours on the flowers, reasonably vigorous grower for this type of plant, and it stood out in amongst the others. So what they actually did was they hybridized it with a sibling, so it's effectively a cross with itself, which in the wild would just be called normal. Anyway, so that's why that's classed as a hybrid anyway. Good new growth coming on that one. I have high hopes for that. Another one that was got from McBean's at the same time. This has obviously got good roots going down into this strange media that they're in. But I said to the guy I got it from, when were those last repotted? He said, oh, you don't need to worry about that for quite a while. So they're staying in there. I take the advice of somebody who ought to know. So this is Odontoglossum or Oncidium, and this is Golden Rialto. Not a bad plant. Good news and bad news. Down in there is the bad news. That was a flower spike. And that's now just stump. But on this side, that is a flower spike. Yay! Wouldn't it have been nice to have had two? Anyway, I'll live with one. It's a new plant, and I'll be over the moon if that really develops properly and puts up a few blooms on the end of that. So those are my Odontoglossums. I'm not changing the name. In my head, that's what I call them. Others can call them what they like. Okay, that's the last of the Oncidium section. An addendum, or in real terms, how to miss one of your best plants because it was on a lower shelf hiding. How can you hide that monster? This is Roseoglossum Rawdengesta. It is a big plant. These are big pseudobulbs. This is as I got it. eBay purchase. Really good plant. It has flowered for me, and it's just started to do something after quite a long time sitting doing nothing. But as this is the first time it's done something, I don't know what that is. I don't know whether that's going to be a flower spike or whether that's going to be a new growth. I'm just trying to find... Yeah, see, if you look, that was a flower spike, and that came out to the side of the pseudobulb. That, you know, if that's typical of where the flower spikes come out, then that could be a flower spike. It is to the side of the pseudobulb. But until it actually gets a bit bigger, I don't really know. It's a good plant. It's recently had an attack of scale. It's had the appropriate treatment. We now have a few dead scale still hanging on there. They're dead, they just don't know it. Yeah, good plant. So sorry about missing that one off, but better late than never, as they say. Thanks for watching. Thanks for dropping by.